We find ourselves at this time in the period of Sfira. We are counting towards the time in which we will receive the Torah. And the Gemara tells us in Yevamis on Daf Samach Beis that there was a period when 12,000 pairs of Rabbi Akiva's students perished. The Meiri identifies this time period as the period between Pesach and Lag BaOmer, and the custom evolved not to have marriages during this time. When studying this Gemara and this Meiri, a number of questions come to mind. Firstly, why does the Gemara refer to them as 12,000 pairs? Why not say 24,000 students? Secondly, and maybe this is most basic, how could it be that the students of Rabbi Akiva did not show the proper kavod, the proper deference to one another? I spoke about this in a previous Drasha. If you've been keeping up with the videos, you'll have one answer already. Why is it that of all the tragedies that have occurred, that somehow it was necessary to commemorate this one for all generations during the Sfira period? And fourthly, why is it that when they enacted this ruling, this was before we had all of the other enactments that relate to Avelos, that relate to mourning, that specifically there was a prohibition against marriage? Why of all things was marriage singled out as the one thing that could not be done to commemorate the passing of these 12,000 pairs of Rabbi Akiva? Perhaps we can suggest that there is something special about a pair. There is something special about a couple, about a unit of two people. When chavrusas study together, they're hopefully not just discussing information. They are seeking to grow in their relationship with Hashem. They are trying to hear the echoes, the messages of Har Sinai, to understand what it means to live as a godly person. And perhaps in the context of that very intimate Torah relationship, the students of Rabbi Akiva that were zugos, that were pairs, that were chavrusos, did not show the proper respect for one another. Lo nogu kavod zeh bazeh. And because they did not show the proper respect for one another, so the Gemara refers to them as the 12,000 pairs. And perhaps the 12,000 pairs of students that perished during this time. So we recall specifically during this time their passing. In this week's Parshat we read, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Love your fellow like yourself. And there are many questions that are raised about this pasuk. Two that are obvious that come to mind are, firstly, how is it possible that anyone could love someone else like we love ourselves? It just seems to be impossible. And in fact, even the great Rabbi Akiva, who says, Zeh klal gadol b'Torah, this is a great principle in Torah. That same Rabbi Akiva says that if one has a choice between saving one's own life or someone else's life, chayecha v'chaye achicha, Rabbi Akiva famously rules, chayecha kodmin, your life comes first. So how could it be that we're called upon to love someone else as much as we love ourselves? Chassam Sofer in his drushes points out that Rabbi Akiva says, Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is a great principle in the Torah. So homiletically, the Chassam Sofer understands that it doesn't just mean of the commandments that we have. This is a great principle. But ba Torah, within the context of Torah, this principle applies. Yes, it's true, you can't really love everybody in the world like you love yourself. Not possible. But in the context of Torah, if you have a chavrusa, if you have a study partner, so then in that relationship, you have to show the proper love and respect. And yes, you have to love that person and what they're saying and what they're thinking and their values and their approach as much as you love yourself. And perhaps we could extend that idea to the Gemara that I referred to before. The students of Rabbi Akiva, it's not talking about in general that they didn't have the proper respect. But to their own chavrusas, to their own partners, they didn't show the appropriate respect. They didn't build up one another. And it's very interesting because the Gemara there goes on to say that if a person loves his wife, if he respects his wife more than himself, so such a person is assured peace. The question arises, why? Why does this only apply to one's wife? One should have to love and care for every Jew. So what we see is that there is, yes, an obligation to be considerate, compassionate, caring for every Jew, for every person in the world. But the relationship that one has with one's wife is a personal, intimate relationship where there is a certain degree of spiritual growth that's necessary. In a healthy relationship between a husband and a wife, it's not only about division of labor. You wash the dishes, I take out the garbage. No. There's something so much more. There is a spiritual relationship that flourishes, that grows. And in the context of that relationship, yes, one shows the proper love and respect for one's spouse, then one is guaranteed peace. And that's perhaps true when it comes to the students of Rabbi Akiva. That, yes, it was the 12,000 students, not 24,000 students. Because it was in the pairings that the issue came up. And it's appropriate that during this time of Sfira, we remember this for all time. Because Sfira is the time that we prepare for the receiving of the Torah. And we know that Derech Eretz Kadmal Torah, Menschlichkeit, decency, has to precede the receiving of the Torah. And so therefore, as we prepare to receive the Torah, we have to remember that in our one-on-one relationships, particularly with our spouses, with our study partners, with our children, with our siblings, with our parents, that it's there that we have to put in the greatest amount of energy and effort to assure a flowering of that spiritual relationship. And I think in these times where we spend a lot of time indoors because of the coronavirus, I think it's incumbent upon us to really work to make sure that not only do we have functional home units, not only are we able to manage, everyone in the house has a different job, a different responsibility, try hard not to aggravate one another, to get underfoot. But for all time they said that this is not a propitious time to have marriages because people need to work on their one-to-one relationships a little bit more. Let us take advantage of this time period to grow with our spouses, with our children, with our siblings, with our parents, with whom we're spending so much time, in a spiritual way as well. And I encourage you, each of you in your own home, have a discussion as to what does it mean to have a spiritual relationship. How can we appreciate the characteristics, the qualities of others? And let us hope that in the merit of this sensitivity, of this display of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha that's unique to one-on-one relationships, that we will indeed be able to merit in a public setting, the receiving of the Torah. Amen.